Neil deGrasse Tyson is talking absolute waffle about Elon Musk. Check this out.
What motivation do we have to go to Mars? Are there oil wells there? Is there diamond mines? We're not going to Mars. We're just not. Unless China says they want to put military bases on Mars. We're going to be on Mars in 10 months. 1 month to design, build, and fund the thing, and 9 months to get to Mars. A geopolitical force operating. Oh, and by the way, NASA doesn't have a rocket that'll get us to Mars. They think they do, but they don't really have one yet. Time to do that. They say, well, does anybody have a rocket? Elon says, I have a rocket. So if Elon rocket goes to Mars, it's not because he sends it there. It's because taxpayers sent it there. By the way, he could go there on a vanity project, but there's no business case. He could fly to Mars, team up with Jeff Bezos. They can send people to Mars. It's not a business case. And if you are an investor in his company, you would not agree to do that. You wouldn't. But he doesn't need investors because he's very wealthy. He could do it on his own. Are you going to Mars as a tourist? Is that a business case? It's $1 trillion to get to Mars, first. Second will be a little less. I don't see that happening.
$1 trillion?
About that, yeah. If Earth were a schoolroom globe, with your fist, show me where you think the moon is. This is Earth. Take your fist and put it at the distance the moon is. Your fist is about the right size compared. Okay. Right there?
Yeah.
Okay, not too bad. It's 30 feet away. It's in the next room.
Okay.
Okay? 30 feet away.
Okay.
That's the moon. Let's keep going. How far away from Earth did the Bezos-Branson rockets go?
Oh, not far.
The thickness of 2 dimes above the surface of the Earth. How far away is Mars? It's a mile away.
From here?
Yes, from this Earth. It's a mile away.
It's in Central Park.
The moon, 30 feet away. Mars, a mile away. Yeah, it's $1 trillion to Mars. Yes.
How long?
9 months. And you have to wait till the planets are configured so that when you travel, you arrive where Mars will be when you get there. I'm not saying we don't know how to get to Mars. We have a SUV-sized rover there now, all right, discovering potential life from 1 billion years ago. It's not like we don't know how to get to Mars. This is not a technological statement I'm making. I'm talking about a practical statement. So, no. My read of history tells me no.
I thought you were going to also add to that even if Elon wanted to do it as a vanity project because he makes all this money and manages to use Starlink as a way to fund it, whatever, that the problem is Elon's going to die. He's going to die in the next couple of decades, which means the vanity element that comes from his childhood situation where he wanted to get out there and explore the stars because he read that book has got 30 years, 40, 50 years left on it.
Well, that would make him want to hurry, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus he said, I don't want to die on Earth. I want to die on Mars. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the idea. So that's a goal. Sure. But don't tell me it's a business case. I can see a tourist case going into orbit and even possibly visiting the moon.
Hans, I do not know what Neil has been smoking. He just simply does not get Elon Musk. Maybe it's because he's a physicist and hasn't made anywhere near as much money as Elon, but I think that's half the point. I don't think Neil understands the fact that Elon isn't actually financially motivated to get us to Mars. As Neil said, the business plan doesn't make perfect sense. And that's because Elon isn't doing it for money. Hans, what doesn't Neil understand about Elon Musk?
Well, the short answer is loads. I think the things that Neil deGrasse Tyson understands about Elon Musk is probably a much shorter list than the things he does not know about Elon. I mean, Neil has never run a successful business. He has never accomplished an impossible task. He's never engineered anything. He's never built any technologies. He's never led a large number of people. He's certainly not a successful investor, and he's nowhere near the autism spectrum. And none of those things really make Neil deGrasse Tyson a bad guy. I mean, he is very smart. I mean, mostly what Neil deGrasse Tyson does is what I do, except way, way better. He does a lot of research. He's a scientist, which is more than I could say. And he's a great public speaker. He's got a great voice. He's very articulate, and he's a great communicator. But just because he knows a lot about things that are already in space doesn't mean he knows the first thing about starting a space company or what it's going to take for humanity to have a permanent presence in low Earth orbit, on the moon, or on Mars. And honestly, I don't know that you can really fault him for that. I mean, even many of Elon's heroes who actually worked at NASA and did a lot of the things that Elon is doing or has done also doubted Elon's ambitions in creating SpaceX and even reaching orbit as a private company, much less achieving reusability with rockets. So Neil is in relatively good company as a hater and a doubter, but it's skepticism from people like him that makes victory by SpaceX so much sweeter over time.
Okay, so wrapped up in everything, Neil does have a point. It's going to cost an awful lot of money to get us to Mars. It's not going to cost us $1 trillion to get to Mars, like Neil said, but the build out on Mars to take thousands or millions of tons worth of supplies, that might take trillions. How do you think that project to Mars will get bankrolled?
Yeah, well, that is definitely the question that is at the heart of Neil deGrasse Tyson's skepticism around SpaceX actually being able to settle Mars. And you can kind of understand the point that he's making there. It is going to cost a tremendous amount of money to settle Mars or to do anything more than little exploratory missions. But Elon is obviously highly motivated to create this self-sustaining settlement on Mars because he does believe it's critical for humanity to have that insurance policy in place. But just because that's the motivation doesn't mean he's actually going to be able to pull it off. So if you listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about this topic in a little bit more depth, which is something that he's done in other places, what you realize is that his mental model for how these types of projects get done goes back to the settling of the New World. So in that system, various governments, whether they were the English government or the Spanish government or the Dutch government, would actually send out these exploratory sailing ships that would go out and look for new people that they could potentially do trade with. And this was such an expensive and speculative endeavor that the governments were the only ones who could afford to do it. But at the core of it, it was the establishment of this trade with other people that lived in these faraway places that we were reaching for the first time that was able to economically sustain that traffic back and forth in the movement of these goods, which was very costly. And that is going to be something that we really don't have when we go to Mars. There's, not anybody there. We already know that for a fact. There's no one really to trade with. There's nothing that exists there that we could mine that is so valuable that it would actually pay for the fuel that it would cost to take us to get there and back again. So that self-sustaining economic forcing function really just doesn't exist. And so inside of Neil's worldview, the absence of that makes this a guaranteed no, just not going to happen, impossible. But without that clear investment case or economic case, the shareholders of whatever that business is just will not be okay with, quote unquote, wasting all of the money that's necessary to embark on that endeavor. But I think Neil is failing to take a couple of important things into account here. One of them is the fact that SpaceX is a private company, and while Elon's not the sole shareholder, he absolutely does hold enough power within the company to push forward on this mission, regardless of whether or not all of the shareholders support him. The other thing that I think Neil is failing to take into account here is the economic use case for lots of other things around the business that SpaceX is building today. That with Starship, they will bring down the cost of launch so substantially that there are all kinds of new businesses that become possible, both here in low Earth orbit, at higher orbits around the Earth, then out to the moon. And in addition to the telecommunications part of the business and all of the defense applications, we've also got companies like StarCloud that are planning to try and put data centers up in space, which is admittedly a very difficult challenge. But I think whether or not they are successful, something like that is inevitable. That's going to be high mass to orbit. It is going to be valuable. It is going to be self-sustaining, and it's going to drive huge growth in the launch portion of the business as well. Plus, space tourism will obviously be a large industry that will depend largely on SpaceX and Starship, at least to loft those space hotels up into orbit, if not carry passengers back and forth. And then you also have point-to-point transportation here on Earth. That, it could be possible to transport people from New York to Australia in as little as 2 hours instead of more like 14 to 16. And so these are just a few of the low-hanging fruit applications that it's pretty easy to think of SpaceX getting into, but I would expect even more applications that we haven't even begun to think of yet, just like there are all sorts of websites and apps today that no one would have imagined having when the iPhone first launched in 2008. And all of that activity that they are going to enable, plus all of the defense activity that's going to be involved in space as we 10x, then 100x, and then 1000x the number of things that we are doing in Earth orbit, all of that activity creates economic use cases for Starship and for SpaceX that allow them to make a lot of money. And then when you add those to the telecommunications aspect of SpaceX with Starlink, that's already a huge revenue driver for SpaceX and will continue to grow. There's just a lot of potential for SpaceX to drive huge amounts of revenue and gross profitability and net profitability that they can then funnel into these missions that are going to Mars, which I agree will be controversial, will be difficult, but still things that SpaceX is capable of doing and likely to accomplish at some point over the next few decades. Before we wrap, I have to say a huge thank you to my co-host David. Besides being a great co-host with a great accent, David has been one of the key figures behind the scenes helping me to grow this channel from 1,000 to over 16,000 subscribers and to put out regular shows that reach millions of views every year. When he's not moonlighting with me, he usually works with businesses who want to leverage YouTube to grow their online presence, and he's looking to take on more. If you want to get more clients and more brand awareness for your business using YouTube, I definitely recommend him. You can book a free call with him using the link in the description below.